Welcome, Mississippi State fans. I know we're not at College Station yet. I know, Steve, we're both leaving tomorrow. I'll be staying, I believe, in Palestine, Texas, about 2 hours away from College Station. I think you plan to stay in Houston. And, of course, you have a engagement in College Station, I understand, in the book signing in Aggieland.
That's true, David. It's going to be at Aggieland Outfitters on University, near campus, from 10 to 2. It's their 25th anniversary celebration this year. They had Johnny Manziel there last weekend. I don't expect to draw those kind of crowds, but
you and Johnny aren't budged? Not going to party together?
No. I think we're both retired. I know I am officially, but yeah. So Saturday, that's where I'll be, and excited to get back into South Texas and cover a ball game at Kyle Field for the first time.
Yeah, I've been there several times, obviously, for baseball and football, and it's a remarkable place. All you hear about it is true. It's a cult, but it's a great cult. I mean, there are wonderful people out there. They take it seriously. A lot of places talk school spirit. They live it. They breathe it. And to watch the parade of cadets before the game is just worth your career, really, to watch just how they believe and what they have going on up there. You have to respect it, and you got to like their colors, too. I mean, sometimes it's hard to tell the uniforms apart, and the Bulldogs and the Aggies with their Adidas uniforms go at it. But there's some things you will definitely be able to tell apart come Saturday. And let's talk about the matchups now. I think the thing jumps out, obviously. You've got a Mississippi State offensive line and offense in general, which has given up the fewest sacks, not just in the SEC, but of all Power 5 conference teams, against an Aggie defensive line, which has the most sacks in the SEC. And on top of that, you have two position coaches very familiar with each other in John Hevesy for State and David Turner on the defensive line for Texas A&M. It's just a great matchup.
It is, David. Something's got to give. And one of the things that I saw in my research is that A&M records a lot of sacks with their linebacking core. And a lot of people get fat in non-conference, but that's not the case with this Aggie defense. They have gotten better in SEC play and really have really harassed Florida and Arkansas quarterbacks as well as anybody has. And so these numbers are not propped up by them playing inferior competition. This Aggie front and this front seven, very good at rushing the passer.
By the same token, you mentioned those two teams. Neither one are known for having agile quarterbacks, especially now Arkansas with their issues at the quarterback position, having a big, slower guy at that position. Florida, all sorts of quarterback struggles. A&M learned the hard way last year that if you come after Nick Fitzgerald too hard, he can come right back at you and blow by. And he caught a 74-yard touchdown in the very first play of the game last year at Scott Field. So Nick Fitzgerald knows what the Aggies are going to do, but as Coach John Hevesy told us, this is a different Aggie defense in that they don't have two great players. They've got a whole bunch of guys that know how to both play their positions but rush as well and play contain.
That's true, and with Myles Garrett being gone, you would think there would be a bit of a step back, but that's not the case. Jared Johnson's the guy that filled in well for Garrett last year. Now he's the starter at that position. And so this is a front, like you mentioned, David. The coaches know each other well. They know the technique well. They're going to know the adjustments well. This will be a really, really interesting matchup in that respect. But I think for Mississippi State, as we've seen, SEC opponents have rushed with some great success against the Aggies. That's what the Bulldogs want to do, so they can get the ground game going. The pass rush is somewhat negated.
And you have to think that Bulldogs really want to repeat last year in so many ways and set the tone early. State scored in the first play. Yes, A&M came back and tied it. The Bulldogs took a 2-touchdown lead into halftime. Nick Fitzgerald had probably his best drive of the season there in the fourth quarter to put that game away, essentially, so the final score was closer maybe than it should have been. That gives a lot of confidence because that was kind of the game. You can almost say that was the turning point for Nick Fitzgerald as an SEC quarterback.
You really could, David. And, thinking back to last year, too, Mississippi State kind of had some revenge in mind this year, after giving away games at Kentucky and BYU last year. They've redeemed themselves this year. You got to feel like the Aggies feel like they let one get away last year and kind of took State for granted. State punched A&M in the mouth, and fans forget. A&M was fourth in the FBS poll last year when this thing happened, and State may have snuck up on the Aggies. That won't be the case this year, but honestly, on paper, other than the fact that the game is being played at College Station, State's the better football team. Now, the history isn't very good for State, but we've only played there a couple times. And so I think the bottom line is if State can go out there, work with the silent cadence, protect Nick Fitzgerald, get an early lead, they can win the football game.
And as historians, not me, I wasn't there, have pointed out State's only other win in Texas College Station came in 1913 before some minor incident known as World War I occurred in that. So it has been quite a while, over a century now, but State hasn't been back there very often. They played pretty well, I think, 2 years ago in that game there. Had some injuries at the offensive line and receiver positions. The year before that, State also had injuries. I remember watching Tyler Russell get hurt in the 2013 game there. So that's a game where you want to keep your guys healthy because things just happen over there. It's a very physical, very aggressive Aggie defensive team, and they can be physical on offense. But right now they really don't look that way. Yes, they've got some guys who can run downhill at the running back position, but they're running a freshman quarterback out there right now who is probably at his best in the Manziel type of offense, ramble, scramble, gamble, which puts a lot of pressure on State's secondary to stay on their men while the front seven, front six do their job chasing them down and trying to contain Kellen Mond.
That's true, David, and that's always kind of been the game plan, Mississippi State, is to keep Aggie quarterbacks in the pocket and make them play quarterback. Last year was a little different scenario. You had a guy that could run a little bit, but Mond is a guy that's very comfortable running the football, and you almost kind of get a sense he would prefer to do it. Very similar to Nick Fitzgerald from a skill set standpoint. Nick obviously a couple years more developed, but he is a guy that's going to bring a lot of elements Bulldog defenders have seen before. But it's a different dynamic because of the fact you're playing down there. And as we've seen here, this Mississippi State team has been dominant at home and had some real struggles on the road, and we'll find out if they've grown from those this weekend.
Mississippi State's defensive team getting some confidence now after allowing just one touchdown in both their last two games, victories over Brigham Young and Kentucky, and of course in their other SEC victory, just one touchdown to LSU. So you kind of see a tone developing that when the Bulldog defense is on their game, holding the other team down, not letting them get the big plays to start the game. This happened at Georgia and Auburn. They set the tone and let Mississippi State's ground game really take charge of things with Fitzgerald, Harris Williams, the young running backs, Nick Gibson, and Colin Hill, people like that. But this is also a game, Steve, where you really want to see some wide receivers step up because one of the key plays last year, Fred Ross, made a big play before halftime. Mississippi State able to take that bigger lead in. We understand Keith Mixon should be able to play this week. There's a chance Martinez Rankin could also play this week. Who do you see on this receiving corps stepping up and making some plays against this Aggie defense?
Like to see Jamal Couch. You know, he's beginning to really develop the physical part of his game. I think last weekend was probably the most physical that we've seen Couch, and he's certainly a very impressive physique, and he's a guy that can be a very physical receiver in this offense. There's really not anybody else like him out there. Got some concerns about Gabe Miles. It's one of those things with him, you know, he's worked hard to get back and then he leaves the game next weekend, this past weekend. Not sure he plays this weekend. We'll just kind of see what happens there. But with Mixon coming back and Dedrick Thomas hopefully being in good health, those are guys I think could impact this game. And State likes to run that RPO stuff, that run pass option stuff, and Mixon's a big part of that. So if Mixon's healthy and he can have a big game paired up against a safety, I think it really aids Nick Fitzgerald's passing attack in a major way.
I think it's fair to say that both Steve and I expect a pretty high-scoring game, much like last year, 35-28 to final. A&M puts points on the board. You're just not going to shut them down. Mississippi State is putting points on the board. The Georgia-Auburn games were different because they fell behind early and had to do things out of character, had to get out of their run game, didn't have the outside receivers. I really expect State's offense to put points up this week and take it down to the end there. Is it going to be just too obvious for me to say the difference could come down to turnovers at something at which A&M has been very good at? Mississippi State a little more iffy about. Not fumbling, but they have thrown some interceptions.
David, ball security is going to be key, and this is a true toss-up. I mean, you know, David, one of the things that I think that with Mississippi State is when they've gone on the road, they haven't been able to run the ball with success. If State can run the football, and indications are they should be able to, then Nick Fitzgerald could have a big day. Nick certainly had a big day against the Aggies last year, SEC Player of the Week type numbers. This is a different dynamic because of the fact you're going down there and you're playing a team that is a little bit wounded. They're a little more pedestrian offense this year than they have been because of some injuries.
And a freshman quarterback
that's
trying to find his game.
So I really think if it turns into a shootout, it might actually favor Mississippi State because I do believe State can put points up in bunches. And one of the things that we've seen with this dog offense is once they get rolling, it really begins to come at you in waves. Once they get one score, they have a way to score in bunches. And I think if that happens this weekend, I think State will be able to get some separation, win the ball game.
Something my peers in the media corps are concentrating on, with justifiably, is State's differential between home and road SEC games. Now, Let's take into a factor that that was Georgia and Auburn on the road, two of the three best teams in the league at this point. Although LSU now is making Mississippi State's win back in September look a whole lot better with how the LSU Tigers are playing. You're down to the position of the season, though, Steve, and we've talked about it for a couple of weeks. You start the second half, you're already trying to position yourself for bowl eligibility. Okay, let's be honest, State is bowl eligible. It would take a modern minor miracle of the wrong type for State to lose to UMass, so they're going to be bowl eligible. At this point, you're playing for what bowl you're going to be in, unless you're at the very top like in Alabama playing for the playoffs. But the playoffs could have a factor as well. It's been fun. You, myself, Paul Jones, our staff have been looking at it. What bowl could the Bulldogs be in? This is one of those games that really is going to have a big say in what day, what location, and what level of payout Mississippi State's bowl destination will be this coming holiday season.
David, this ball game could be the difference in going to Florida or going to Tennessee. It's that simple. I mean, you lose this ball game, you could be in a situation where you're in the Liberty Bowl, the Music City Bowl. You win this ball game, it's a real good opportunity to be, to have a 9-win regular season. That's a real possibility, and then that of course puts you in contention for several bowls in South Florida. And I think that's what we would all prefer. But that said, this is very reminiscent of that Auburn game where we knew we were going to be in a bowl game. How good a ball game was determined by that. Now State has an opportunity to kind of claw their way back because of some issues within the league and perhaps two teams making a playoff. You kind of get a mulligan. Now we're going to find out how much the Bulldogs have grown since they were caught up reading their press clippings a little bit after the LSU ball game. Now that you've righted the ship a bit, what have you learned about this process, and has this team matured enough to take care of business on the road?
We'll find out Saturday evening. Mississippi State against Texas A&M, 6:15, ESPN Network. Steve and I will both be there. We'll be doing our usual pregame video as well and our postgame wrap-up, hopefully about a Bulldog victory with the highlights of what Mississippi State happens on their trip to Aggie Land. Then we'll come back and get ready for an 11 o'clock kickoff a week from Saturday against the University of Massachusetts, who, by the way, got on the scoreboard last week, defeating Georgia Southern. First win for the Minutemen. Not a big factor, but anything that helps State's strength of schedule can look good in that regard, too, just like LSU's making the strength of schedule look that much better as well. So we'll have plenty to report from. I know Gene Swindoll, Mike Neal will be covering this weekend's baseball scrimmages being held in Jackson, Smith Wills. Those of y'all not joining us out in College Station, please, if you've got a chance, just go watch Andy Canizaro's team play. I know the weather's going to be a little cooler this weekend, a chance to sit there and get an idea of what the 2018 Diamond Dogs are looking at. And as well, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that Bulldog basketball, women had their first scrimmage on Wednesday night. Coach Ben Howland's team will be playing a secret scrimmage. They'll be in Texas as well, in fact. They'll be out at Fort Worth playing Texas Tech. Nope, can't go there, it's closed. But basketball season's starting to get closer as well. So we'll try to track you next week with our staff. So speaking for Steve Robertson, this is David Murray from the SEAL Meeting on campus on Thursday as we get ready to head out and hit that road, gone to Texas on Friday. Be talking to you Saturday from Kyle Field.